Hello there. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I am so grateful that you are here. Thank you for your patience for those who have been waiting for the live stream to start. Always a typical Mercury retrograde, always some sort of nonsense. So I needed to do some updates and there was glitches, and I'm just happy that I made it at all. I was really wondering if my streaming software was going to cooperate at all today. So I'm very grateful that you are here and that I am here. And if you're catching this on the replay, you don't have to worry about any of this because you're getting the recording. So thank you for being here whenever and however you do so. And welcome back to the subscribers, to the Starseed Fellowship, to those who are subscribed to the Catalyst Classroom. This week we're going to be diving into Chiron, more of our Chiron sessions, looking at the Starseed markings and looking at the fixed stars that are related to where Chiron is currently transiting, the constellation of Centaurus, which is really the memorialization of Chiron and the stars according to Greek mythology. And there's a pretty prominent starseed origin in the Centaurus constellation, which is Alpha Centauri, and that is pretty important to us here in this solar system because Alpha Centauri is our closest stellar neighbor. So we're going to be going over all of that this coming week. I'm going to be posting that content. So if you're interested in what the Starseed Fellowship, Catalyst Classroom, everything you need actually is in the description box below. I don't want to belabor too many of these things, but just in case, there's always new people that drop by. And I can't tell you how many people are now regular parts of the Starseed Fellowship and the Catalyst Classroom that found these videos through the algorithm. So if you do value this content, you want the channel to grow, you want more people to engage not only with their own journey, but the community that's growing, you can subscribe to this channel, you can hit that like button, you can comment, you can share. It all has an impact on the algorithm that then sends out to a wider audience and makes recommendations. So thank you for that. And let's get into it. So I think it might be very important just at this moment right now that we all take a very deep, cleansing, diaphragmatic breath right now and get ourselves very centered as we embark on the 12th of September. It is the Starseed Ministry. I have a reading to share with you for today. We'll look at the chart for today, but it seems pretty clear based on my own experiences, the Reiki attunement, and the reading that I'm going to share that went along with that, and just the general feel is that, you know, with the full moon, it is a culmination point. And somebody, if it's Sarah, if you're here, Sarah, I'm not sure, made a point about the full moon and her own process about learning about the moon cycles, about how a full moon is a time of forgiveness. And that's often something that is not considered or talked about as much. At least I don't find myself giving too much attention to that. So I really appreciated that perspective coming in. And a full moon in Pisces, right? If there was ever a time to tap into that forgiveness, compassion, universal humanity and cohesion in a way that is not just mental, which is kind of the Aquarius thing where you can conceptualize it, you can intellectualize it, you can know it, even from a collective consciousness standpoint, but it's in the realm of Pisces where you experience it, you surrender to it, you feel it, it flows through you, you are one and the same with all there is. And it's the area where things like forgiveness can really be easily accessible to yourself, forgiving other people, right? And forgiveness is not about excusing people's behavior or giving them a pass on things that have truly been destructive, detrimental, have betrayed your trust in any way. It's about realizing that we all come from the same source, and to be able to forgive other people also allows us to forgive ourselves and to be forgiven, right? So full moon in Pisces, right? Culmination point. It shows us what is working and what needs to go to allow for integration. And forgiveness is a big part of that. So now we're in our third quarter of the lunar cycle, right? From the full moon to our third quarter moon. So this is about integrating. This is about, finding the space where the polarity can be brought together or blended. And this is the work of Virgo, right? It is the unglamorous. It is the sometimes we feel frustrated. Sometimes we don't want to fulfill those things we know that we need to do because they don't fulfill our ego or a sense of feeling, right? It actually has to, that energy of Leo has to be put into a form, right? And we have to learn how to put it into a form that is capable, really, of holding the fullness of that which we want to embody, right? And if we want to embody, our highest potential, right? Our own spirit, if we want to embody, love and forgiveness and compassion, we have to have a form that will allow that to, that energetic template to interact with. And this is so much of the work at this level. And actually, I was just listening to Alex Collier's latest webinar. I haven't finished it yet, but I was just listening to the first bit. And one of the things he talked about, which I've been really feeling, and some of you may also can relate to this, and please drop it in the chat or certainly in the comments if you feeling the same way. One of the things he said is that now there's a lot of the integration into the body, and so some people have already gone through this process and are kind of anchoring it, and a lot of other people are now literally in the process of making this kind of interwoven, integrated experience. And it's not, it comes with its challenges. This is why Virgo in the 6th house is really about hidden enemies. It is about facing your challenges. There's some sort of healing crisis, whatever it is. The Virgo energy is so related to that. And this is where our patience pays off, right? And our maturing, our ripening, coming to fruition. So you may find yourself really feeling that more than you ever have in terms of the integration. Either you're getting downloads or intuitive guidance in your dream state or your meditation on what this actually looks like in real time, taking it out of the intellectual and actually living it. Some people may be having a harder time than others, and many people are going to be kind of, bluntly pushed into this probably by the end of this month. Maybe we'll come into early October. It just kind of depends on where we all are at. One thing is for sure, though, that our collective consciousness really is steering this whole thing. And I think that the more you can you really relate and identify with that, to put your attention into how much power we truly have, like our real empowerment, I think it really does take away a lot of the fear and the worry and the anxiety about really difficult things that may present themselves to us in our personal lives, in our families' lives, and certainly in kind of the macro public arena. So we'll look at the astrology, of course, for today and throughout the week, because this is the time where we are really beholding the full moon and what it showed us, what it revealed, what was that culmination point of our own intuitive guidance. And in Pisces, it was pretty substantial. I mean, I feel like I got some very clear messages. Well, maybe not fully clear. Sometimes it takes a little bit of decoding when you're talking about Pisces, because it's just the resonance of source or the universe or your own spirit. And so you kind of have to integrate that into a new system, and in order to come back around to it and find the abstraction of it through symbols, through archetypes, through stories, through the narrative, it's real easy to get caught in the loop of the narrative, right? Instead of trusting your own instinct, your own intuition, and actually applying that to something where you are completely conscious and intentional about what it is that you are contributing to creating. And so we can't control everything, right? There's a lot we can't control. We can only control ourselves, our behaviors, and our responses to what does happen around us. And the more we can put our power into that, I think the better off we're going to be, because it seems to me that, there's too much. It's a stale, old, tired playbook, honestly, of just keeping the attention focused on these things. And what's the difference between being informed and being afraid? And I think that's something that's worth considering right now as well. And what a time with Virgo, especially Venus in Virgo, and really I don't want to say softening the edges, but oftentimes when Venus is in the 6th house, for instance, right, it really gives like this hope and this sense of warmth and real value to this process. It's really like a pregnant mama in some kind of way of like, you know, the patience as it's maturing and ripening and all of the discomfort and disease and comfort and expectation that goes along with that. And Mercury is going to be coming back into its home territory of Virgo right after the equinox, before the Libra new moon on the 25th. So there's still more for us to analyze, to for numbers to crunch, right? To be organized in our thoughts and our intention, our consciousness, right? There's still more to go around in terms of that, but we're getting a lot of information right now with the retrograde in Libra, I should say. So I'm going to check in with the stream real quick, and then I'm going to move over to the reading. Honestly, before I check in with the stream here in the chat and interact with you guys, one thing I just want to say is that the Schumann is still blacked out. It's been blacked out for like 130, 140 hours now. Like this is 6 days here of quote unquote darkness. And, whatever the reason, I did put like a post on Telegram about a lot of this stuff. And regardless of the reason, right, if it's truly just mechanical failure that's coincidental, that's a long time. It's a long time. It feels like it's almost shut down in some ways. And to what end? I think what's more important to be asking is, okay, so how am I trusting my instincts in this realm, right? Because we've become very... I would say collectively, for those who are paying attention to the Schumann, I speak personally, right? And this is how you have to learn, is that you become, you find those people that explain things in a way that makes sense to you. And there are... eventually you have to, it's just like the guru, the teacher, whatever, right? Eventually you have to go out on your own and figure it out. And I feel like the Schumann it's kind of a blessing that it's dark, because now we have to feel into what is going on. I know how I usually respond when these certain things happen. So it's time to kind of do that Jedi thing where you put on the blindfold and trust your feelings here, and be able to feel it out yourself, right? Search your feelings. That's the thing they say in Star Wars all the time. Search your feelings. Well, I feel like that we may need something that will almost force us into that. And I know that it's scary because it's like this dark hallway that you have to walk down by yourself, and you're like, I don't know what's down there. But we're all doing that in our own way together. And I think that the Reiki attunements, boy, it has been bringing so much up to the surface, but it also has been creating a grid amongst all of us that has been so, so powerful. So there's not much happening with the space weather. It's finally calming down in terms of the geomagnetic unrest. There's been beautiful auroras, but it also has an impact on us psychologically and physiologically as well, but it's starting to settle down. There are big sunspots, but nothing is really flaring outside of the C range. And so about fell out of my seat when I heard Ben on Suspicious Observers talk about that the seemingly quiet of the sun might be related to human consciousness. My jaw dropped, because I was very shocked that somebody on a science-based channel would even broach this. And you could tell that he was like, the only reason I'm even suggesting this is because there's really no other explanation. And I'm like, oh yeah, well, Occam's razor. He's a smart researcher and a true scientist in a lot of ways. So there's nothing going on. So I have nothing to really share other than it's all quiet right this moment. So now I'm going to check in with the stream. Barb says, great to see you this AM. The title, Trust Your Instincts to Discern the Truth. Geez, how relevant could that be? I don't know. I have no idea. How relevant could it possibly be? Mama Wolf Memories. Wolfpack is here. Hello. I'm so excited to see you on the live. VC says I was getting downloads all weekend. Yeah, huge downloads. Like that full moon in Pisces is just been, I can't believe some of this stuff that my subconscious was communicating to me. And I was like, whoa, this is pretty remarkable. And Barb says, definitely feeling the new grid starting to take shape and take root in the midst of the chaos. Perfect way of pulling that all together, Barb. Thank you. And I do too, right? It was a little like, even at the very beginning, it was a little like, whoa, there was this reverberation, but it's definitely, it definitely feels like it's that like I talked about before, like a quartz crystal, right? That piezoelectric effect, right, where the energy will move across the surface of this grid pattern that we've been creating through our own commitment to our healing process. And it's only with, more pressure and more heat is just going to make that energy move faster. And imagine if we can tap into larger grids. And I think that this is what, I think we're going to get kind of like this, how do I say this? It's like, I know there's a lot to be concerned and scared about, and I'm not suggesting that things aren't going to take a sideways turn in a way that's going to be very challenging. But the whole point of the attunements and why I felt so called to do it at this time is because it will provide that scaffolding and structure, just like Barb said, the new grid starting to take shape and take root in the midst of the chaos, right? And the North Node right now currently has transited into 14 to 15 degrees Taurus, which is all about braving the storm, right? This is part of the process right now. And so I can't say any, I can't say enough amazing things about what this process is doing. So there'll be another one in the spring, these Reiki attunements, 3-week lead up to the equinox, because I think it's really very powerful. So I want to bring up the reading, because boy, it's getting right to it, right? It's not pulling any punches. And that's definitely the energy that I felt this morning too. It's just like, it's time to kind of get like a little serial here, super serial. Super serial, but in a way that is not like, getting really tense and tight about it, but, getting really serious about, well, where do I and the other shit out here begin? And like, where is my level of power in this whole situation? So it's going to be different for all of us, but, we all feel this buildup, right, coming, and it's really the result of us creating it. So we might as well continue to create it from our vision of, something amazing, right? And we know that the tower has its moment of like, oh shit. But, the sun and Uranus were in a trine yesterday, and Uranus in its retrograde, right? And so a lot of this energy under the surface, but still this sense of like, I know what I'm working for is kind of, not even kind of, I think it really did establish a sense of very material balance, just like was said with the grid. It's like taking root and giving us something to work towards, and to manage the challenges that present themselves, not just to us personally, but to all of us together. This is really the way that we're going to be able to do this. Okay, so I need to be able to focus on making the transition here. So what else do you guys have to share about your weekend? How was your full moon, right? How what's going on for you? If you're part of the Reiki attunement, what is that feeling like for you? And anything that you want to share or drop into the chat or the comment section, just because the more that we share with each other, I think the more that it's going to really benefit us. So, let's see here. I'm going to try to find the reading. Now, the moon is in Aries right now, and late last night, early this morning, it was in conjunction with Chiron, and I definitely saw that connection to Chiron really pushed people's buttons, like in a way that was just like a real struggle for them, right? And because the Chiron wounding isn't being acknowledged or even seen or even understood at all remotely. So there's not this sense of seeing the discomfort or the, crisis moment in some ways to this where are we attuned right now, right? I mean, are we attuned still to like the feedback loop of our own shame and guilt and all the things we can't pull ourselves out of in order to step into our spiritualized consciousness? Or are we being realistic about it? Are we actually feeling into how, what is it that holds us back? What is it that we can step into? Like that rainbow bridge of Chiron. That's why we're covering it right now in the Catalyst classroom. So where is the reading? I can't find it. There we go. All right, transition. Here we go. All right, friends. So as you can see here, we have two princesses flanking this with a reversed fool in the middle, right? And talk about really struggling to trust your instincts, or maybe needing to really go in to discern the truth through your instincts. A lot of times when the fool is reversed, it's definitely some sort of like madness or some sort of like not trusting your instincts, being really reactive. And I do feel that way right now in general in terms of the reading, what I'm experiencing, observing other people, even myself, right, is this moon in Aries. It's really easy to emotionally be reactive or, just outward flaring in some ways emotionally, as a means to let off some energy, right? That can, and inflammation, boy, moon in Aries, inflammation is a big one as well. So that's something to always consider, I think, when we go through, especially what area Aries is in your chart, you might really feel it. But I can feel all of this kind of reactivity rather, as in general, and at the heart of things, having the full reversed and this sense of really maybe not trusting our instincts in the face of, stepping off that cliff, maybe being kind of like, ooh, do I want to do that? Especially when we had the princesses, our causal factor that was like, pretty much all playing in the flames and enjoying this whole process. But she really does, here I'm going to show it to you, she really does burn down the object of her own desire, doesn't she? She is unaffected by deeper emotions, right? I mean, she's not really, this is Venus in the fire sign. So Venus as the ruler of either Taurus or Libra, right? There's no water here necessarily, except for her mother, right? The princess has the queen as the mother, and the queen will often represent the water element in these court cards. So unaffected by the deeper emotions. I mean, this is much more about being in the space of holding one's own passion and desire and lust in a lot of ways. Now, she can be very thirsty for all kinds of things, and revenge can be one of them, right? But on the plus side, the positive side, there's a lot of passion, enthusiasm, courage, beauty, right? We're talking about Venus or the princess, insatiable hunger for life. But again, burning down the object of our desire, then forgetting all about it, right? As if it didn't even exist because it's not right in front of you. Again, unaffected by deeper emotions. It is just Venus in the fire signs. So we saw this card quite a bit in the weeks and even months, leading up to this point. And then she kind of disappeared for a while. There wasn't a lot of this. And so I think this is just a reminder about where we've come from, right? And this passion, this enthusiasm, but also the other side of that, which is the dancing in the flames, the insatiable hunger at the expense of deeper emotions, at the expense of maybe relationships, right? And the cohesion of them. So there's, like I said, enthusiasm, beauty, right? And she's very playful. I mean, you can see that she's got, speaking of cat energy, this has been coming up a lot, and we talked about it in the last Starship, and chats and stuff. There's just been a lot of Lyran energy and a lot of cat energy surrounding people right now. And you can see that this cat is really just an extension of the antennae of the Princess of Wands. There's a sense of having it wrapped around her and almost submissive, and relaxed, right? Just going along for the ride. So the courage and the leadership and the sense of power that comes from these large predatory cats, and the Lyrans, right? The Lyran starseeds really embody this a lot, is really, almost an afterthought to what the Princess of Wands is up to. And then you see the hearth flame. This really reminds me of Vesta, the goddess Vesta or Hestia, right? The hearth flame, the goddess of the hearth flame, and the Vestal, the virgins, the priestesses that are responsible truly for making that their dedication to hold this flame and be the keeper of flame. So here is the flame, and there's a sense of excitement and passion for this, but not a lot of responsibility, and certainly not a lot of groundedness or even thoughtfulness about it. It's very it's very anima, right, in its pure form, which is a lot of this like Lilith energy in some ways, right? So when we move from this to the full reversed, right, I mean, here it is again. Here is this little lion, and it's just like, nibbling on the Fool. There's a sense of real honest and real like trusting instincts, like being tapped into one's animal nature from that Uranian perspective. It's like Mercury and Uranus together, right? Curiosity, spontaneity. When it's reversed, it's kind of like madness, right? And consider that both of these planets currently are retrograde now, and the Fool is in this reversal position in the heart of things. So there's changes, there's movement with this card, usually innocence of a child in a lot of ways, and the positive breakup of structures and limitations. That sounds like a Tower card to me. Certainly sounds like it can be easily triggered by any kind of Uranian energy right now. So trusting our instincts is really the Fool stepping off the cliff with that smile on the face. And you see, again, you have this little, it's the same cat, right? That is not even an afterthought. It's a companion. It's a playful companion that's like, hey, I'm still here. Like, I'm going to nibble on you. But the Fool was like completely, surrounded by all of this spiral energy, all of this, you got butterflies, you got dragonflies, you got all of these circles everywhere. There's a lot of cyclical energy. This is the zero, the beginning and the end. And I just feel like this reversal right now is a real resistance and a kind of questioning, right? Do I trust my instincts? Is this what I want to, what is it that the full moon brought up that I want to bring into, or, forgive and bring into a new creation? Well, the moon's already in Aries, so I have a feeling that we are feeling what that may be and having a hard time, or just, it's kind of superficial, right? Like we don't have, there's a sense of madness, or there's a sense of instability here that is not really like the smiling Fool with the crystal, quartz crystal on its head, but really is just, being disturbed by the disturbances, if that makes sense. I think there's a real struggle here, and distrusting our instincts and fearing, the stillness that comes about from, a stepping off the cliff in full trust and just, being in that moment. I think people will fill their, you know what I mean? It's just like this, the script will continue to run rather than, again, walking down that dark hallway and being like, I don't know what's down here. I'm really not, I don't get a good feeling of, I'm scared to go down here, but it's even scarier in some ways for some people to, not have that space filled. And they would rather fill it with their own, their own feedback loop of negativity than for nothing, right? Because that's pretty much how we have been conditioned for many generations, if not, centuries at this point. So The good news is, as we embark on our axis of power, right, this vertical axis, just like in the astrology chart, the Akashic Library is at the root. So there is a commitment here and a new initiation and a movement into a higher self-awareness that I think the full moon in Pisces is a big part of. It gives us a better understanding of old motives and new purpose, and truly the breadth of our landscape that is before us rests solely on the scope of our imagination, right? So having this at the root here of where our real power is about the new initiation, and this sense of understanding where we've been and now new purpose is really based on our ability to consciously go into this space. So you can see there's a staircase going down. You're going down into the library. You're going down into the soil of Virgo in order to understand your place within it all. You're going into the dark hallway of your own self to really, shine a light there. And the Hermit card, it just came up finally in its upright position for the Reiki attunements. It's like, okay, finally, like there is a sense now that we can go into this space. And so there has been resistance to this, but now I do feel like some of that has been like, well, we got to get the right equipment to go into this area first. If you don't have a light to bring with you, how are you going to shine it when you get in there? I think that that's been part of the timing of all of this as well. So here's the Akashic Library, number 2, by the way. And then, but where are we really focused here and where our power can ultimately be released is releasing ourselves from our own self-imposed prison. And so we've seen the Caught in the Ruins many times. It is also number 16, the same as the Tower card. There's a situation that seems to have you trapped. There's a way out with some determination, but these limitations are often self-imposed, and it takes a lot of courage to change what lies within us, right? So we have to change every faulty belief, every sabotaging choice as they happen. And that can be exhausting when you realize how much of the script you're running or program you're running, that every thought, every action, every reaction is based on this, right? It can seem so daunting and overwhelming to be like, oh my God, like how can I possibly work in a way, what can I do about this? This feels like I'm trapped here. So doing nothing certainly will perpetuate your attachment to this situation again. And I think again, that's where this has this Uranus, Mercury, this full in its reversal is maybe doing nothing, right? And not doing nothing in a way that is like, well, doing nothing as a choice, but really just out of analysis paralysis. And a lot of Virgo energy, I think, could also lead to that as well, because there's a lot of data. And Mars is really pushing with that data, right? Mars and Gemini. So don't let the ruins of the past ruin your future, right? They're there to help us learn. They are there for us to grow and transmute from. And, it's just a matter of perspective, right? All these people have to do is look up and be like, oh, I can climb out of here now. But they're not. They don't realize that it's all they've known, and so they just stay here. So the fact that this is kind of at the top of the awareness right now shows that we really can release ourselves by really grounding and tapping into this Akashic Library of our own soul's journey, our own karma, really consciously making a choice to go into these areas in order to initiate something new, right? To acknowledge our past, what's working, what's not working, realizing that the old will never truly be able to confirm the new. And this can really lead us to, I think, release ourselves, right? So here's releasing ourselves, the Princess of Swords. So you have the Princess of Wands, and the other side of this gets a lot more rigorous and serious. So let's get serial is really where this seems to come from. So you have Venus now in the air signs, and it does feel in some ways like this is going to be Venus and Libra, right? So Venus will move through Virgo. Venus will be opposite Neptune retrograde on the 25th, and so moving, so that's about 24 degrees Pisces. So Venus is moving roughly a degree a day-ish, so in relation to us in the zodiac. So looking into early October, right, she's going to move into her home territory of Libra. So that's something else to consider, that there is coming this opportunity in this time where we can really apply this rigorous and very serious perception. Now, the thing about the Princess of Swords is that she can often show characteristics of kind of being immature and not really, she hasn't really come into her full nature yet because it's still the princess. And so there is like I said, serious, rigorous, perceptive, but there's also a lack of morality here because it hasn't been developed yet. So there's a lot of impulsiveness here, but also very curious and clever, right? And so this card has us as a court card, right? A part of ourselves, a person in our life, somebody that we see and interact with, showing skill in dealing with material matters or conflicting opinions, right? Because those two things are actually very Libra, right? Because either conflicting ideas or opinions or material matters are all weighed, either way, it's all weighed against the weight of a feather, right? And that's something that I brought up in the newsletter that went out to the email list. So if you're interested in that, you can actually get to that email list by going to catalystenergies.net, which is linked in the description box, and you can sign up right from the homepage. And it's about 3 emails every month that just kind of let you know what's going on, and it's usually when I first drop the sales that are going to be relevant to that time period. So if you want to get a jump on those kinds of things, that's it. Or you're not on social media, you're not really often getting on video platforms as much, and so this is a good way to have a place to check in regularly about what's being offered, where we're at with things, and just stay in touch, really. So that was one of the things I talked about as well. Is just the material quality of Libra has a lot to do with you cross a threshold and offer yourself or your works, your labors, what you have been maturing into the social relationship for true transmutation, right? Because if you never bring it outside from inside yourself, then it does just stay there. So I see this energy. It may feel like it's getting too serious, but in fact, I think that this is, once we lose our inner fear or a sense of insecurity, right, then there is a lot of generosity here. There is a sense of courage, like real courage here, and kindness. And all of the Venus and Libra energy is truly about the scales of justice being held by the blind woman, because she's not using her sight, she's using her feeling to feel the balance. And I feel like that's something that we really need to embrace a lot. Some people a lot more, and other people know exactly what I'm talking about, and they've been actively doing this, right? To know what it feels like. What are your instincts telling you? What are the physical, magnetic, energetic feels of a situation, and how not only will you adjust to it, but with Venus, it's just like, what does it, does it lead to discomfort? Does it lead to a sense of imbalance? Does it feel fair, or does it feel unfair? Does it not feel just? Does it not feel like it's in equilibrium? Venus and Libra is going to be like, you know what, I'm going to mount my defense even at the material matters or the conflicting opinions that will likely bombard us too. So that I do get the sense here that, yeah, this might be even this week, of course, but I also get the sense here, looking out to Venus in Libra in general, I get a big vibe from that as well. So let's see. Let's look at the guidance, because this is where it's not pulling any of the punches as well, right? 2 worlds. We've seen this already. That came up, I think, in the Starseed Ministry reading from last week as well, the 2 of Scrolls, if I remember correctly. I know it's come up very recently. So this is about, again, the conflict between our outer world and our spiritual direction. And this is going to continue until we learn to bring spiritual self into every situation, right? And this is the conflict between, this conflict between outer and inner is part of why we may be caught in this situation. And we're like, I don't I'm just going to, now again, analysis paralysis, or you just don't know that you are trapped. And I think a lot of people are going to be facing that in a very substantial way. This card is about replacing worry with trust and to integrate your eternal truth with your temporal reality, right? Here are all these things about integration. You must deal with or leave situations that keep pulling you away. That doesn't mean you literally do, but you may have to. But I would say leave the situations that keep the mental situations that keep you trapped. Who you are forever is who you are now, right? And so tapping into that is so powerful. And when you own it, self-realization in both of these areas will be obvious, right? There will be no illusion, it won't elude you anymore, if that makes sense. You will come to know yourself in both of these realms separately and together. And this is going to be really important to really master about yourself. And here it is, the shark. Trust your instincts to discern the truth of the situation, right? This is about, also, there's something really important to consider about this card that I always seem to bring up, which is that it's really important to realize that your instincts, or what you think are your instincts, our instincts, can be conditioned by past trauma, okay? That's what PTSD is. The PTSD is the expression of our natural instinctual self-preservation to triggers to past traumas that are still embodied energetically in our reality. And so we have to also consider this as well. And if we don't consider that, then we may think we're trusting our instincts that are actually an overlay of consistent messaging or past trauma. I think that's a big one too. Doesn't mean that we shouldn't use those experiences as a way to actually discern when they are coming back again. That's the other thing about it, right? Your feels and your intuition, they get heightened as a result of these traumas, and also we learn from them. But I would say here that it's important that it's the instincts, and that you are aware of your triggers and your instincts and what it feels like, right? What's your gut check, right? And that is going to have a lot to do as well with what are we initiating at this powerful level at the, our Akash, right? What is it that we are aligning with or resonating with in order to bring it into fruition, right? And I don't think, the process of the two worlds is we need the contrast to even understand it. And so I think there's something beneficial about it as well. But there's a lot of messaging here about, trust instead of worry, trusting your instincts, right? To be a conscious participant in going into the root of your own power and you writing your own story for who you are, rather than pulled back into those realms that are strictly material, that are pulling you into your PTSD or instincts that are they're not your instincts, right? They're conditioned. And that is a tool, and it has been for a while, I feel like. But no more, right? That's just a matter of being like, oh, I'm done with that. You don't have to, don't concern yourself. I'm good, right? So speaking of this, caught in the ruins, I mean, this is a pretty clear indication that we're coming out of this, right? It's just a matter of perspective. It's a matter of just looking up and being like, oh, I can just crawl out of here? Oh, I didn't really. And this is your own mind in a lot of ways, or your own collective history that those contracts are over and done with, right? And we get to decide now. And I mean, this is such a huge asset and such a huge resource that is just falling all over themselves to continue to control it, right? And so this is just, we're coming out of that. We're coming out of that darkness. And it's not to say there won't be more challenges, but the whole point of this is that we've learned so much based on the darkness that we have been in, that now we take that and we use that in order to make the most of and address the period of challenge that is in front of us. There's determination and focus that we have developed as a result of these past situations, okay? That's something to consider. And there's a lot of messaging too about feeling like we're going to give up, people feeling really depressed. And this is something that Alex brought up too last night, really about people giving up, and the tendency for this may start to increase or expand quite a bit. And it does, people may need help when they're not asking for it, or they might suddenly feel like something has totally flipped them around, and it could be something they don't even realize, but they're still reacting to it and feeling a significant loss of power in their lives. So perhaps you're following someone else's agenda when your instincts tell you not to, right? This can lead to a feeling of disempowerment, and certainly giving up when you are caught in that loop, right? And that could be your own internal dialogue that is the agenda, right? And so it's important that people realize they have to rise up and take their power back, right? To call it back to themselves. When you understand your true value, which is a big Taurus thing and a Venus thing, big time, you will know that you deserve to carve out your own destiny. It seems so kind of like, well, duh. But really, it's one of the hardest things that and we all can attest to this. I know we can. And there are people in our lives that have not made this leap. And there are people in our lives that you're watching them make this transition right now, where they realize their true value as a spiritual being in this experience, to carve out their own destiny. And that fool will flip right around. It will. I assure you, because at that point you're like, oh, I tread this path. I make these decisions, and I'm going to trust my instincts rather than rely on what I've been told my entire life, the energy of my family's expectations. Now, Let's actually move into the astrology, because this is important to bring up, because Lilith has moved back into Cancer, okay, in her retrograde. And this is one of those things where if we find ourselves in that Lilith energy of attempting to overcompensate by our feelings of frustration or lack or being cut off from source, where we'll get even more consolidated, get even deeper into those family lineages and traditions. This could be, especially in a retrograde, keep us or others from really being able to get out of that, right? Especially if it's destructive, or it's run its course, right? I mean, we all have to molt our skin, right? We all have to shed it. The hermit crab has to find a new home, and that's just part of growing, right? You don't stay in the womb forever. And I have a feeling that that's going to be a big problem with Lilith as we move forward in her retrograde. One last pass through Procyon back to Sirius, and then, in direct motion again, through all of these dynamics. And what does that mean? Lilith will be opposite of Pluto. Lilith will be in a trine to Neptune in Pisces, right? I mean, it's just going to bring up all of these stories again, right, of Procyon and all of the different facets of the story that has to do with Procyon. So that's actually a great segue. We'll move into the chart. I'm going to check in with the live chat here for a moment before we move on. Make sure I am addressing if anybody has questions, comments. Certainly see what the conversation is looking like. That is pretty, that's what I'm into, certainly. So I'm checking with the stream here. So Barb says, Aries emotional flaring. Yes, there were those moments last night. Such a mixed bag of emotions in the wake of the Piscean full moon. It's time to integrate. Totally. Yeah, I'm feeling that. That Akashic Library card for me is a new teacher initiating me into deeper ancestry work. Feel that that's what uprighting the Hermit card. I totally agree with you. And actually, in terms of like these archetypal images, right, the Hermit is connected to the High Priestess in the tarot, and that is number 2. And so the Akashic Library, the High Priestess, this represents that part of ourselves that can access the mysteries of who we are and our deep intuition. And the upright of the Hermit card is like a conscious, like you just said, Barb, just like a conscious decision to start walking down that stairway. I had a dream maybe 2 nights ago, and part of that dream I was like, there's all this anger that I'm still holding on to on so many levels that is it's not, it's definitely from things that are really specific, but there are also things that I think are inherited, and things that are multiple lifetimes that are making their presence known, like really unavoidably at this point. And I had this dream that was kind of part of this whole thing. But one of the things I remember very distinctly is that I was kind of running around this large building, like a high school, right? Where you have, like your auditorium and your gymnasium, and then all the classrooms and all of this stuff in the building. And I remember I was like running, right? I was running away from the thing, because I was pissed at this thing. And I was trying to get somewhere else, and I was running through all these places. And I remember opening, how they have like 2 double doors, right? And I opened it up, and I stepped there, and I looked down this hallway. This is why I've been using this imagery, because this hallway that was like dark and endless, and I felt such a strong, like, oh, I'm not going down there by myself, right? But it was clear that in the dream that the whole point is that I am going to have to walk down that hallway myself, because there is, the reliance on what I wanted but didn't get at a certain time in my life is what I'm angry at, but that's what has to be released, right? And we have to be responsible for our own journey. And so there is some fear in the dream. There was definitely fear. And so and just kind of like, oh, I'm not going down there. Just like in real life, I probably wouldn't do that either. But that's exactly what the Hermit does. They go in, not for the sake of themselves, but for the sake of going into the sake of bringing that light back up from the darkness through everybody's own journey together. So, man, some really good comments today. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate you so much, and like what we're all doing together. So here is the chart for today. And I think this is where we'll end. We'll look at the astrology for the week, but it's pretty, I wouldn't say mellow, but the next major transit is going to be towards the end of the week, where the Sun and Neptune are in their opposition. So, of course, this is a point where we continue to come back to over and over, right? Mercury has already opposed Neptune once, is going to do it again in its retrograde before stationing direct, like at that degree. Venus is soon going to be in opposition to Neptune. So there is this continual challenge to the great solvent of Neptune in Pisces, right? And it's the solvent within our own souls, right? It's the solvent within our own experience. And there's clarity and deep intuition and an incredible opportunity to access, which is what is normally kind of held back through our own conscious awareness and our own boundaries of materiality. But there's a lot of willful ignorance to not see what is happening. And so many people are getting, they've stayed kind of within the flow of the basically the propaganda. That's a big kind of Piscean, especially Neptune, my gosh, because it's not about facts, it's about the feelings with Neptune ruling Pisces. And to be in Pisces, it's like, it's all the feels all the time. And, if you can't swim in deep water, I mean, you're kind of screwed. And it's been very difficult, right? I mean, a lot of us, I can say for me personally, you know, you get knocked down a couple pegs when you're just like, boy, I thought I had my shit together. And we've talked about this. Many people have already brought this up in like the Starseed Fellowship and stuff. You think that you're done with something and you're like, nope, it's like this endless peeling of an onion. And so then you realize, well, if it's endless, then so is this experience. So then you don't have any like sense of I got to get to the finish line on any of this, right? It's the experience of doing it that is what we are here to do, not getting to this finish line. And I think that's something else to really consider as all of these oppositions to Neptune take place over the next week and beyond, you know, through the rest of September. So here's today's chart starting at 10 a.m. Eastern when this stream started. Ooh, it's 11:11, guys. That's great. Very auspicious. I've been seeing a lot, you know, it ebbs and flows, but it is definitely flowing right now in terms of the number synchronicities. They're kind of all over the place. So always good to pay attention to what you're doing or what you're thinking about or anything that is catching your awareness when that happens, because that's more relative to why your mind is pulling you toward paying attention to these numbers than anything else, or your instinct or your gut, right? Just you happen to look over and you're like, oh, well, we're talking about the astrology and Neptune. So the sun just had that trine to Uranus. We just talked about that. And you can see that, you know, there's not a lot of bright kind of like, hey, but what we can see is that the moon has already crossed Chiron, which really did flare a lot of people or lead to a sense of real despair in some ways because not being able to really let go of the past and having a really strong emotional impact. Like, for instance, I know an Aries rising person who the moon came into Aries and they kind of went into crisis very suddenly. And I saw this person the night before and they, you know, people are really good at hiding, right? They're really good at bypassing. And it was, you know, I would have never really... They did not give any indication that they really needed like support. And, you know, the moon flipped into Aries and came across Jupiter and Chiron for this person. And they went into like a crisis of like themselves, right? An identity crisis, and especially meeting Chiron. It's pretty gnarly out there. So also remember that everybody's in a different stage on their journey as well, but that's not our responsibility to take it. And I really struggle with this as being like a strong Sag person, 11th house, 10th and 11th house person. Like, it's a lot of energy in my natal chart situated at the top that has to do with the you know, the big, so the social identity and expression. And so being in the individual, especially, I mean, I could read my whole chart for you at some point, but that's only for subscribers, right? That's for the Starseed Fellowship. That's who I'm reading my chart for and giving an idea of like, hey, this is how I'm going through these things. So the moon is crossing over Tau Ceti. The moon is going to be crossing over Andromeda constellation between now and all day tomorrow as the moon moves through Taurus. And so a lot of Andromedan activation. So again, if you're into Alex Collier, I mean, he is my primary source on Andromedan contactees, other than myself. And I would recommend that you, really embrace that idea as well. But, I mean, the perspective of the fifth density human that has not come into this form, and what would that be like? How would that feel? It would be like being in touch with with source in who you are at every given moment. You never, and acting on instinct and assertion is not something that has to be mitigated by anything, because it's a direct connection. And that's where we're going, right? That's what it means to be in fifth density, is that the contrast is so masterfully, the process of integrating our own contrast is instantaneous. Therefore, you as an individual being with a fifth density consciousness can bring that awareness into form instantaneously, right? And you don't, there's no reason, there's nothing to mitigate necessarily. So with the moon crossing all of these Andromedan constellation stars over the next day and a half or so, this is a really great time for Andromedan starseeds to find that space within them emotionally and personally, and their own intuition again, right? I mean, trust yourself, even when it's uncomfortable and it hurts. Like, you have to find that space where you're able to tap into something deeper than just the reverberations of an old story of yourself. And this is, where people are struggling, and we're all struggling with it. So one thing at a time, right? So the big stuff that's going on for today, really, I mean, Mercury's still in retrograde, Venus is in Virgo, Mars is in Gemini, right? And Saturn's still retrograde in Aquarius. Like I said, Rahu and Ketu, the north and south node of the moon, our moon, has shifted into a new degree. And so this is the braving of the storm, right? The courage needed to meet the crisis, precipitated by social ambition, right? I think that's something to consider too, is that Taurus is really, when you come into materiality, the separation consciousness is what meets that. And ambition gets played out in the Gemini in the third house. Kind of, we learn about this stuff. And so, but just being connected to a material reality instinctually pushes you to have, to want things, to gather things, to have things, to be comfortable. And this is part of our soul's evolution right now, is moving towards this place. Now, like I said, Lilith is moved into Cancer. I see what I did. I was like, that's not accurate, but it's because I have the true node and or the average nodes and the average Lilith. So let me fix that real quick. Then you can kind of see too how I chart these things, so you can look at them. There you go. So Lilith is at the last degree of, or the first degree of Leo in its retrograde, is moving back into Cancer. So again, this is something that is important to be aware of in yourself. And when you feel like you're losing a sense of character, if you don't feel emotionally secure, if you're really questioning where you belong, and if your deep emotional life is being very much just, if you feel cut off in some ways, Lilith, if not acknowledged, is going to find, you will find a way. She will be heard. And I really caution people during the time that Lilith is retrograde to just be aware of that. Not to say that there's nothing here to really preserve or to consolidate in terms of personal power, but we know with Lilith that she creates the void in all of us that's necessary for the flame of creation, transformation, and truly spiritual divinity to embody us, right? The archetype of the feminine in its blended or integrated state, right? It's not just the feminine, it is the feminine that embodies the masculine, right? Because that's the flame. So just be aware. And it may not be you, but it may be other people that are completely unconscious to all of this that are going to be acting in a way that's like, right, pulling in again, or suppressing, or finding a way to consolidate, when that may not be. You don't want to consolidate too much, and you certainly don't want to abuse that energy. And that's where the Scorpio energy comes from, in relation to Procyon. But that's something that we've talked about and continue to talk about in the Starseed Fellowship. So I think one of the things that really stands out too is that the sun in Virgo is in a quincunx to Saturn in Aquarius today. And it's funny because Virgo and Aquarius seem like they should get along in terms of like this really mental, really sharp and organized and kind of heightened state of mental awareness, but they're actually in a quincunx to each other. They don't fit together at all. They're the 5 out of the 12. They're the 150-degree angle, right? They're the wild card. So to have these two in a quincunx today shows, especially Sun and Saturn, right? They are the child and the dad energy in a lot of ways, right? The vibrant, energy of expression and our devotion and our blessings and our voice and our heart's resonance, right, in a quincunx to Saturn, which especially in the retrograde has just, been such a incredibly dense and really pressurized experience, depending on where Aquarius is for you. There, we're all working together. And this is where the sun in Virgo is like the caravan of cars all going out to the West Coast, right? There's a sense of totality in our purpose and our effort that we're all kind of identifying with this coming together. Where Saturn is, there's no mutability here. It's very fixed. And is very entrenched in a lot of ways, and also very strong and very structured as well, depending on which version of the collective consciousness, I guess, that you are either identifying with, or your relationship to the resonance of the collective, as it is always in flux and changes based on each individual's participation. So, but there is kind of this message of hope that comes out of this, that maybe will kind of spur us to be a little bit more identified with where we're going, which again was a big part of the sun in a trine to Uranus yesterday on 9/11, right? That there is we're all working individually towards some sort of collective goal that benefits all of us, right? And now it's the actual action of us all coming together that the sun is representing in this totality of purpose, right? We're all in a caravan together going to this place. How do we circle the square? How do we square the circle, right? How do we transmute this energy? Like, what is the wild card that's coming out of this with this quincunx to Saturn in Aquarius that I think it's really just about, again, trusting our instincts, finding where we are secure, finding that place within the collective resonance where we are able to identify this kind of message of hope, right? And know that it is through sustained efforts that we get some sort of feedback about how those efforts have been going. So definitely some wild card energy that on the surface may seem really difficult to find where these things fit together, because there is a lot of ego battle with the sun and Saturn in relationship, especially something like this. But at the same time, this is kind of like, again, I feel like this full reversed could easily turn itself around in these moments. And maybe it's this quincunx that we utilize in order to do so, where we are trusting our instincts as opposed to feeling like we're a victim of something, right? But we do have to take advantage of the shift that happens with a quincunx, right? So that's something to consider that's going on today as well. But the moon will have a sextile, you can see it right here, have a sextile with Saturn, and also quincunx the sun. So even the moon and the sun, the two polarities of ourselves, are asking for integration and alchemy, right? To find the place where the circle takes the square, right? Hollywood squares. Like, that wasn't some sort of, I can't even get started on that. What that show was all about. But circle takes the square, right? That is the transmutational energy of this quincunx. And even the sun and the moon in this relationship is part of that. So Aries and Virgo are also quincunx to each other, because our instinctual action and this intentional burying in order to, it's not even burying so much as going under the surface to really draw what we need to bring something to fruition. Those things don't seem like they fit together, but when you do find where they fit together, wow, you create something brand new, right? You find a sense of cohesion and balance around it. So and we're, like I said, we're still in like the zone of Andromeda. So I think this quincunx and the fact that the moon is actually in a favorable position, or a sextile, right? That 60-degree angle with Saturn at the very same time. It's like, this connection to finding that compassion, right? And it's kind of a weird thing, but the 20 degrees of Aries, the Sabian symbol is a young girl feeding the birds in winter, right? And so it's the overcoming of crises through this type of exercise compassion, this action that is in this moment fulfilling the individual's subjective identity, and through this process of attending to others or helping others in some way, and through a compassion, right? And this is, you can feel the polarization of Aries and Libra with a lot of this. So again, this is, I think, going to allow us to utilize this energy really, really well, honestly. And a moon sextile Saturn, it's like, it's not as dense to our emotions as other transits with Saturn could be. It's really like, oh, okay. I see that, and I feel like the stability and the stronghold of Saturn within myself, right? My inner resonance in relation to the outer resonance is something that we can find a sense of security in if we choose to, that will then kind of give us this, activate this energy of compassion, so that we can, in fact, like, all go to this place together, right? And it seems to be referencing this need to continue to focus on ourselves, but start to make this transition in our own self, that this will have a purpose more than just our own process. Like, our own process is what we offer into the social order in order to establish fairness, justice, and balance. So we are going somewhere, and we know that we're going somewhere, and it is going to find its moment of perfect form with the equinox on the 22nd. And right now is just leading up to all of that. And that, of course, that's opposite Aries, where the moon is right now. So we're getting a sense within our own intuition and our feels about our own instincts, right? Our own discernment, and how that is going to play out in terms of the next lunar cycle, right? A new moon in Libra, right? The equinox that's coming. So, like I said, the next big transit moving through this week, I mean, it's not like there aren't other things going on, right? Here's Lilith opposite Pluto again. This is tomorrow on the 13th, right? You see that Lilith is making a lot of appearances this week now that she's gone back into Cancer. This means she's in a trine to Neptune again. So those aspects that, represent kind of like an endowment, like a willful, like a willingness to receive some sort of like providence or an endowment of some sort emotionally through Lilith is going to be very much in a trine to Neptune. So you don't want to get so caught up and be like, you know what, I'm just going to let God take care of it all. I'm not even going to be part of this process. That's one way that this could absolutely express itself. But the other way is that, it's when we let go of our need to have this that creates the space in which it actually is going to come through. And you may find it's very cathartic, and the deluge, right, of purification that comes through and just wipes and sweeps away everything that is corrupt and perverted about everything that has transpired really since the last time Neptune was in Pisces. So there's just going to be a lot of this Lilith energy over the week now, and the moon's going to move through Taurus, of course, like I said, and now it'll be in a square to Saturn, in a trine to Pluto while it's in Taurus, and coming into the weekend is where, and we talked about this on Friday as well, just looking at it, this is where it starts to pick up again. So the week with the moon moving through the bottom of the, the three aspects of the zodiac, which have to do with individual identity, is some time to really to really feel into what that is for each of us. And that's going to be different depending on where Aries, Taurus, and Gemini are in your chart as well, the area of life that this is most expressed. But when we get to Friday, Sun opposite Neptune, the Sun's going to have connections, or Venus is going to be in a trine to Uranus, right? This is Mars and Venus are in a square. There's just going to be a lot happening by the end of the week. And we're going to have our third quarter moon in Gemini on Saturday too. So then we really are going to have to adjust ourselves. So my guess is that on Friday, with all of these really big transits like coming to fruition, we may find exactly the crisis point that will force us to reorganize our own consciousness when it comes to that third quarter moon. So it is very mutable, right? Mutable signs of Gemini, Virgo, Sag, and Pisces. 3 out of 4 of them having to do, at least partially, with the mind or the higher mind. Pisces being completely in the feels. So, but it's moldable. It's malleable. It's flexible. It's really just a matter of what are we going to emotionally prune away in our own subconscious, in our own history, right? In our own past, all those areas that allow us to tap into the mystery, which is what the moon allows us to do. So I'm not going to say that the week is going to be not exciting, but it looks to me that we're going to get, it's going to be, by Friday, it's going to pick back up again, right? And in terms of these transits and what kind of potentials they provide for all of us. And then coming into our third quarter moon, right? That means we're leading up to the equinox. We're in our last lunar quarter on the balsamic moon. And by the end of this lunar cycle, which is the 24th, really, coming into the 25th, Venus will be opposite Neptune. So all of these Neptune oppositions that have been in the mind or in the voice or in the heart are going to be really in the material reality here with Venus when this happens. And so that's something to consider, that a sense of innocence, a sense of purity, a sense of hope for the future, right? A sense of playfulness almost of what's coming is really going to probably help in that scenario with its opposition to Neptune, especially in its retrograde, that is like, okay, well, let's be realistic here about our dharma. What is it that we're really here to do? And I think that Venus boy, it seems like, again, the fool in some ways, but, in the negative, kind of, right? The negative, the yin, the feminine, right? We're not putting a qualifier on that. We're just saying that it's in that side of things. It's going to be that opportunity again to kind of like turn it around and find that fool within ourselves and in our own heart that is ready to step off the edge, full well knowing that everything, it's all intentional, right? And there's a lot of curiosity and spontaneity that goes along with that too. So it's never boring, that's for sure, my friends. So just checking in with the chat here. Mama Wolf Memory says, you're the bomb, D. Well, thank you. The love bomb. That's right. The Reiki attunements are exactly what I needed to propel me into the new energy grid. Can't thank you enough. Well, I can't thank you enough for being part of that process. Really, truly. Sarah P says, I'm just listening and reflecting on anything that could be relevant. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's no overstating how important that is. Barb says, feels like lots of anger and grief coming up so that we can choose to clear our sacral and solar plexus so that the new grid can get grounded in us. I totally agree with that. It's been pretty ruthless in a lot of ways. For me, it's manifesting so physically that I can't ignore it. And I have to actually focus on myself quite a bit. So, but I'm grateful for it. Like I said, I don't have any trepidation about any of it, even though I know that it is kind of like walking down that dark hallway by yourself. Mama Wolf Memories, I can't wait to hear what Alex has to say. So far, I like it, right? So far, I always like listening to him. He sounds like me sometimes in my own head. Great title. Light on Change says, great title. Definitely the way to go. Now I'm curious about Hollywood Squares. Guess I'll chew on it for a while and figure it out. Yeah, you can go down that rabbit hole. I'm curious to see what you come up with. And Mama Wolf says, me too. All those game shows we were programmed by. I'll tell you what, when I was a kid, speaking of this, and then I think we can probably safely say that we've reached our limit for today. When I was a kid, when I would, like, really young, right? When my parents, I had working parents, I spent a lot of time at my grandmother's house, my dad's mom, and, like, grew up, down the street from them. And I was the first grandchild, so I was definitely very spoiled in terms of her, and also very protected. When this is such a weird story, but the game show thing made me think of it. When I was a kid, so when I would be there, they would just have on, either The Price is Right was on during the day quite a bit, and other game shows. But I remember that there was this one game in The Price is Right where the little yodeler guy would climb up the mountain, and you'd have to stop him at certain points, and you'd win money or prizes. But if you stopped them too late, it would fall over the edge. And for some reason, that imagery scared me to death. I hated it. I absolutely hated it. And I can't explain myself other than, something that something that was resonant with me at a very young age. And it's not like I have a memory of being, falling off a cliff or anything else. But boy, it really terrified me. And it makes me wonder now, like, how much of how much we've been programmed by those things, and what is it that may have intentionally been, like, what kind of button may have been pushed, who knows. I think it's more likely that there was probably some soul memory of some type of event that reminded me of that. I also hated Mr. Rogers as a kid. I don't remember this either, but my mom swears up and down that was the case, that I hated Mr. Rogers. I wouldn't watch it. The Land of Make-Believe freaked me out. I do remember that. I remember just being like, I don't want to watch this part. Like, I didn't like it. I thought it was weird. And maybe there's a Mandela effect thing going on here, that in that time frame there was something else going on that now is not relevant anymore. But I really wonder, like, what that is all about. Like, I had other shows I loved. I loved Pinwheel, right? And all the other standards, but my mom is pretty insistent that I hated Mr. Rogers and I wouldn't watch it as a kid. So yeah, the yodeler guy was totally creepy. So anyway, we're getting into a digression here that we can talk about on our own starship. So I'll tell you what too, and then and I don't want to, like, ruin anybody's, it just really rubbed me the wrong way when Tom Hanks played Mr. Rogers. Like, I just couldn't do it. I was just like, oh, damn. And, like, I'm sure there was a lot of reasons for that, but and some people have done some digs on Mr. Rogers, and he was obviously part of he was part of it, right, on some level. I'm not saying that he was a specific part of it, but he was a part of he was either allowed to be there, he was recruited, he was, groomed in a lot of ways, or he was just directly part of, the secret societies and the mystery schools. That I can't say for sure, but something is off about it. And, anyway, I don't want to end it on a bummer. So, and certainly just more curious about things than anything else. So, but you guys, seriously, have a really great week this week. Take very good care of yourselves. This week here, I'm going to show some stuff to you so you know what's going on, at least on my end. So, I'm going to show you, number one, that the Catalyst Classroom, we are going to be talking about the fixed stars and the starseed origins. I talked about that already. So, if you're interested in that, you can find links in the description box below to the Catalyst Classroom and the Starseed Fellowship. Those are all bundled into one monthly contribution or subscription fee of $5, and you're getting all of this content, including video content and slides, and then the Starship, every Zoom call every other week. So that's happening with that. And there was one other thing that I wanted. I didn't bring it up. I was so flustered with my stuff not working when I first got on that I never got a chance to show you the flyer for the equinox reading. So let's see if I can bring it up real quick, because I think it's worth sharing just so you know what's available. So I'm basically opening up my sale rate for the equinox readings. And it's $99. It's a 90-minute recorded reading, and we look at your natal chart, we look at your progressions that are relevant, and we look at the starseed markings that are relevant to you. Basically between the equinox and the December solstice, which is going to be mid-December, as it usually is. Okay, here we go. All right, so a new process begins, the humid made sacred, right? This is about the integration process. And so these readings are now available through catalystenergies.net. You just go to the homepage, you can sign up from there, and it's $99 for a 90-minute reading. We're going to cover the next 3 months in relation to your chart. So if you're interested, you can find everything you need in the description box below. So, my friends, thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you so very much. Please take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. I appreciate you all so much. If you are doing the Reiki attunements, this is the reading for the day. So I'll be with you tomorrow as I update you and give the full transmission for tomorrow's attunement. But otherwise, I'll see you on Friday for the astrology report, and on Telegram if you're around those parts. And take care. Love you guys. Bye.